Good morning, this is WBCR, and you're listening to DIY World Improvement. I'm your host, Catherine Carlozzi. Guest hosting this edition is Anna Escona, who's a freshman here at Bloomfield College majoring in broadcast journalism. Anna has been my intern throughout the semester, and I offered her the opportunity to produce and co-host today's show, which focuses on world improvers from within the Bloomfield College community. Our first guests this morning are Dr. John Towsen, co-founder of the Creative Arts and Technology program here at Bloomfield, and Professor Martha LaBare, a published poet and associate professor of English at the college. John and Marty are both involved with a private foundation called the Open Society Institute. OSI's mission is to promote democratic governance, human rights, and economic, legal, and social reform around the world by shaping public policy. It encompasses a group of foundations that implement a broad range of initiatives on the local level to advance justice, education, public health, and an independent media. These foundations also build global alliances on issues such as corruption, human rights abuses, and freedom of information. Anna and I met with the professors recently to talk about their involvement with OSI.
I think one of the things that has mesmerized everybody over the last couple months is this so-called keystroke revolution that's going on in the Middle East, where we have young people mobilizing with texts and tweets and posts to YouTube and Facebook to try to bring down repressive regimes. You've both gotten involved in programs that provide young people, future leaders, with tools that turn them into advocates for positive change in their countries. 2 years ago, that took the form of a program that Bloomfield College co-presented in Turkey, the 3-week Global Advocacy Institute that focused on global climate change. I know that you both taught in the program's journalism and new media track, and Marty, you also taught in the performance and art track of that program. Talk about the program and its objectives and how you got involved in this.
I got involved with OSI over 10 years ago. It was actually a friend who directs one of the programs, and I did first some freelance work for them in the area of multimedia, producing CDs for their debate program. And then my first trip with them, I guess, was in the year 2000 to Russia. They had the big World Youth Conference centered around debate with students usually from 40 countries. They had classes and a debating tournament, and we were producing a magazine directly out of that experience. And so that was my job there. And since then I've traveled with them to, I don't know how many countries now, probably 10 or 12 countries.
Do you go every year?
Every year for the past 4 or 5 years, yeah. This will be at least the 5th year in a row, I guess. The programs vary because the OSI, Open Society Institute, is made up of various sub-programs, and they have to apply for grants, and they try new things. So it's not like a college where things are a little more static. They do change each year. But I got involved. It was an exciting thing to do in the summer. I mean, it was quite incredible, actually, because you go to one of these places, and as I said, you're working with students, very interesting, motivated activist students from 30 or 40 countries, all together, and who are there with some serious concerns and things that they want to do when they get back home, skills they want to learn, things they want to organize, and also the desire to network and perhaps maybe the first time they even left their country, and then suddenly here they are meeting all these other people. So it's incredible for them, but it's equally incredible for us. I don't think we go there as great white fathers or the great American masterminds. I mean, we just learn so much from it that it really becomes a privilege to be there. It's highly educational for the teachers, and that's not us. That's not false modesty or anything. This is just the truth.
And how did the climate change advocacy program come about?
It was, it is one of their concerns. They do fund a lot of environmental organizations. And because we had been doing these media programs for youth, citizen journalism for youth, and they also had a very strong debate program, they wanted to bring all these together, and they wanted to, instead of as in previous years where it was a little more open-ended, what the subjects and themes would be, they wanted to try something where they would focus just on one theme, which was climate change. So they were dealing specifically with advocacy skills. And the students, and that year was, I believe, 37 countries. And the students, vast majority of them, came with a lot of experience, political experience.
Yeah, they come as advocates.
Yeah, already.
The Bloomfield students who were with us that year, less so.
Starting out.
Starting out, yes. So that was a little different. Everything was organized around that theme. So the debate track, they were debating all of these issues about climate change. And in the performance track, they were creating performance material around these themes. And not just performance material, but also poems, stories. And in the media track, they were developing all kinds of skills that they could use to run a campaign against climate change, to fight for the environment.
And you were in the performance and arts track in part. Talk a little bit about that.
There was a team of an artist, a writer, another writer besides myself, and an actor-director that worked with students on creating original pieces, street theater, street art, organizing their artistic and writing skills for campaigns, in some ways public relations for the cause that they're working for. And some of the students were very experienced and some not. They chose to be in that track and worked really hard. I mean, that out of class, they were constantly working together and rehearsing and demonstrating, doing impromptu productions in the dining hall and getting attention in that way and seeing if it would work with people.
Testing it out?
Yeah, very much. I worked with students in particular on protest poetry, and each student brought a couple of poems from their home cultures and their home languages. They consulted with teachers and families and talked about what were important political poems, poems about change. And then in the group, they read them in their own languages and then read the official translations or their own translations. Some of the poems you could, immediately identify as protest poems and contemporary, and others, I remember Sarah brought one from the 50s when Egypt got independence, and its language was absolutely relevant 2 years ago, and of course it's absolutely relevant
today,
now.
I'm sure.
A Latvian student brought some 19th century short poems that were about culture and identity and autonomy, and those were also relevant. The great thing was they read them, or even recited them, aloud, and then they heard the translation, English being the shared language of everybody at the Institute, and then they talked about what was lost in translation.
That's particularly interesting. And I know that one of your interests, John, is humor. And I noticed that was a track, or part of the
It was. I
arts
can't believe
track.
I left that out.
That must
Nathaniel
be...
Towsen.
Is that your son?
Yes.
I assumed so. And you did take student
That's why I have
teachers
that.
with you, didn't you? Or, sort of as assistants, several
Yes,
Bloomfield
we had
students and young
we had
adults?
3 Bloomfield students who worked as teaching assistants for the past 3 or 4 years, and they've taught classes and done all kinds of AV support for us. So it's been quite an experience for them, and they get paid. All expenses plus a salary.
Yeah,
not a great salary. Nobody makes a lot of money out of this. This is definitely more
closer
of a charity.
to volunteerism.
Yeah, but especially for students, it's a good gig, and for them it's very eye-opening.
How many Bloomfield students went to participate?
9.
And 2 working.
Right, we only had 2 working that year, right? Yeah, right. We had 2 working that year and 9.
Did it end with sort of a day of performances, and what was sort of the end game of the sort of the final exam, if you will?
Yeah, there is a large group presentation. Yes, there's a showcase of readings and videos and a sample debate by the top debaters. Things like that, and a party.
Yeah, and the performance and art track had also done original poetry, and those selections were put into a chapbook with each poem illustrated, and so the chapbooks were distributed that day, and that was also put up on the web.
Now, last summer you both went to Uganda, Thailand, and Nepal, right?
Yes, we
and
did.
That was media training?
Yes, it was not specifically focused on a theme this time, but similar in the sense that the students were all activists, and we had students who'd been in jail for their activism already, and it was regional. So in Uganda we had, I believe, we had 4 African countries, East African countries in Uganda. In Thailand, we had 7 or 9 Southeast Asian countries represented. And Nepal was just Nepal. Nepal, we really went only for the first week as advisors because it was conducted in Nepalese, whereas the others were conducted in English. We still ended up doing some teaching there with translators and stuff, but basically about half the students really didn't speak English. But the theme last year was not specifically how to advocate for this cause. It was more journalism skills as they carried over into video, because they were creating sort of short video pieces, little video documentaries, but trying to follow sound journalism practices while they do that.
And as you've watched what's happening in the Middle East, where the core of the revolution seems to be millennials, you've been involved in these programs to help younger people use all of these tools to affect change in a peaceful way. How are you viewing this? What are you thinking?
Well, what we like to tell people is when we went to... She's laughing already. When we went to Uganda, we had a 7-hour stopover in Cairo. So we basically take credit for the Egyptian revolution.
Did a little teaching there on the side, huh?
Well, we did go to the pyramids.
But in fact, Sarah Rifat, who is an environmental activist and a political activist, and who brought the poem from the 50s that I had just mentioned, has been on Facebook, except when they shut it down. But she is constantly posting from Tahrir Square and articles that ordinarily I probably wouldn't find on the 7 points of misinformation about the revolution. And so one of the things that this does for us, not just the students, but importantly for the Institute participants, is it connects you very personally to what's going on. So many news stories now, you immediately think of people you know and get on the internet to them.
What's next? Where are you going this summer?
Well, if you'd asked that 3 days ago, we would have said, well, but now it's just starting to shape up, which is pretty typical of OSI, that, things tend to be a little more late minute than you'd want them to be, and vaguer than you'd want them to be, although they do all seem to happen. So this summer it looks like we will be spending our first 2 weeks in Kazakhstan running a workshop in English, then a little time off, and then we're going to be in Kyrgyzstan, but that will be sort of like Nepal in the sense that we'll be advisors, because that one will be in Russian. So we will help get that set up. We may only be there 3 or 4 days, and then we're going to fly to Malaysia and do the same thing, the same kind of the same people. Southeast Asian workshop we did last year. Last year was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and this will be in Malaysia. But again, we'll probably have students from like 9 or so Southeast Asian countries.
Okay, and in each case, these will be more media with that.
Yeah, I think these will be the development of what we created last year.
Yeah, citizen journalism and new media. And I want to add that some of the last-minute construction of these programs has to do with the people on the ground, I guess I would say. That this isn't going in to do something for somebody. The regional and local organizations have their set of goals that this kind of institute can help them realize, and it's a collaboration with the intention of having follow-up. And so it takes a lot on site and in the region to make it not a one-shot deal.
And I know you partnered with other organizations on the global advocacy climate.
Yeah,
that
350.org.
was 350.org.
Bill McKibben and
Tactical Tech.
An idea, I think, too.
An idea.
Yes.
Well, idea is a OSI offshoot, basically.
OSI is so complicated; it's hard
they have a lot of programs.
They do. They have a lot going on.
The debate idea is the debate program, and they've been around for about 13 or 14 years.
Yeah, it's the acronym for International Debate Education Association.
Well, thank you both for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
It certainly is an interesting and productive way to spend your summers. I'll look for you on camera in Tahrir Square next summer.
You never know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Marty, you also taught in the performance and art track of that program. Talk about the program and its objectives and how you got involved in this.
I got involved with OSI over 10 years ago. It was actually a friend who directs one of the programs, and I did first some freelance work for them in the area of multimedia, producing CDs for their debate program. And then my first trip with them, I guess, was in the year 2000 to Russia. They had the big
range of initiatives on the local level to advance justice, education, public health, and an independent media. These foundations also build global alliances on issues such as corruption, human rights abuses, and freedom of information. Anna and I met with the professors recently to talk about their involvement with OSI.
I think one of the things that has mesmerized everybody over the last couple months is this so-called keystroke revolution that's going on in the Middle East, where we have young people mobilizing with texts and tweets
from within the Bloomfield College community. Our first guests this morning are Dr. John Towsen, co-founder of the Creative Arts and Technology program here at Bloomfield, and Professor Martha LaBare, a published poet and associate professor of English at the college. John and Marty are both involved with a private foundation called the Open Society Institute. OSI's mission is to promote democratic governance, human rights, and economic, legal, and social reform around the world by shaping public policy. It encompasses a group of foundations that implement a broad Good morning, this is WBCR, and you're listening to DIY World Improvement. I'm your host, Catherine Carlozzi. Guest hosting this edition is Anna Ascona, who's a freshman here at Bloomfield College majoring in broadcast journalism. Anna has been my intern throughout the semester, and I offered her the opportunity to produce and co-host today's show, which focuses on world improvers
and posts to YouTube and Facebook to try to bring down repressive regimes. You've both gotten involved in programs that provide young people, future leaders, with tools that turn them into advocates for positive change in their countries. 2 years ago, that took the form of a program that Bloomfield College co-presented in Turkey, the 3-week Global Advocacy Institute that focused on global climate change. I know that you both taught in the program's journalism and new media track,